Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Nakya. I'm a data analyst, and in today's video I am finally getting to some of your requests to do a video on I believe there was a request to do some aggregation, which we're going to do or plan to do in today's video, and then also there was a request to show how to do multiple joins, so we're going to do that today. Because these videos don't typically do that well, if you do like this type of content, please like the video, comment if there's anything that I did not go into too much detail and you'd like a further explanation or something you didn't get. Please comment that information below. It's helpful for me to make future videos, and also comment if there's any video requests that you have. So what we're going to do is we're going to work with this. We're going to work in BigQuery, and because they have a lot of free data sets that you can work through, I'm going to specifically work with this Stack Overflow data set, because the way that databases are designed, you have these different databases and they have several different tables, kind of like in a tree format. My only issue with BigQuery is that I can't expand this out to see the column names. You actually have to click on these so to get the different field names. We'll work through that. I plan to work with 3 different tables, if you will. We're going to work with I have them pulled up here, but we're going to work with the user data. We're going to work with the post answers and the post questions. I believe within those 3 data sets, when I looked at the schema, the field names I could do joins on, and then also we can do some aggregation here. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so first let's understand the data that we're working with. We're going to be working with Stack Overflow's public data set, which there are 3 main tables that we're interested in. As I mentioned, the user table, the post questions table, and the post answers table. So the user table contains information about the user profiles, their reputation, and their join date. And then the post questions table, which is this, it contains all the questions asked. So information about the questions asked, and then the answers contains information about the answers given. And our goal here is to just come up with a report showing user engagement across these areas. Okay, so first I want to give a disclosure that there are multiple ways to write a query. What I'm doing is not the only way you can go about doing this. You can do CTEs, you can do subqueries, you can just do a straight up just query where you're doing the multiple joins. It's all user preference. And when you're building your queries, you definitely want to build them so they're optimized, not taking up too much space, especially with a lot of companies moving to cloud-based servers and things like that where you're paying per query. So I'm not necessarily trying to optimize my query here. I'm just trying to show how to do the joins and how to aggregate the data. So again, there's multiple ways to go about doing this. This is just the way I'm doing it for this tutorial's purposes. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with our user data set. We're going to select some basic user information from that user table. So let me go ahead so I think we're going to get their ID, their display name. I'm just trying to think and we may not necessarily use all of these in our final query, but just gathering some basic information, okay, that we may need to join on later. So first, let me copy the table name from the user data set. So I'm going to go in with a select. So this is me giving a command to tell the database, I want you to pull these columns. So the first column I'm going to do is, and actually let me come down a couple rows. I'm gonna do from, paste in this, and I'm gonna give the table an alias. And to alias your table, you can do as and give it a name. And I'm gonna call it the user table, so that when I reference it later on in the query, or actually now I'm gonna reference this, because some of these tables have overlapping names, you have to identify to the database you want this column pulled from what specific table. So I'm telling, hey, select user dot, if I can spell right, user dot ID. I'm telling it to retrieve the ID from the user table. And then we're going to pull user dot, I think it was display name. And you guys may see me flipping back and forth between the tables so I can make sure I have these names correct. And it was user dot reputation. And let's see what else we have. Reputation, display name. I don't think I need age or anything like that. I'm gonna do views. And then I want, what is this? The date, creation date. Let me preview the table. Let's see, we may need a date sometime. So I'm gonna do date. And you guys, just a tip, like when you are creating when you're doing an alias or naming something like a column, use snake case, please and thank you. So we have this basic user data, and I'm going to put, because I'm gonna do where, and your where statement is where you actually add your filters. So user dot reputation is greater than, because I'm going to assume reputation means the larger the number, the better your reputation here. So let's just do 2000. And so we're doing multiple filters here. So this is just you filtering down the data that you're going to get back. And I'm going to say I want my users, so their join date, I'm going to filter that down as well. Creation date. Let's see, 2020. So this is going to give us back users who joined since 2020 and have some kind of reputation. So let's just run that. So we have these user IDs, their display name, what their reputation is. Remember we filtered it so that the reputation is greater than 2000, how many views we have, and we have when they joined Stack Overflow. Now what we're going to do is we're going to join to the questions table next. All right, and just to go over a couple things that I think I did without explaining. So first thing being with calling out date for the user creation date. If we go back to the user table and look at the preview, you can see in the creation date, it's actually a date timestamp, and I don't necessarily need the timestamp. So that's why I just extracted out the date here. You can do this by extracting out the year as well if you only need the year, which I could show you guys in one of the statements as we get further writing the code. But yeah, I'll see if we can do that somewhere. But if not, you can extract years from date timestamps. You can extract the day, you can extract the month. There's different ways to go about doing that. All right, so now we're going to move on to joining our user data, and we're going to join it to the post questions table. So let me go ahead and grab that table name here, and I'm going to do an inner join to this table. So I'm going to modify this, and I'm going to join. So with an inner join, you can write it as inner join, or you can just write the keyword join. It will still do the same thing. So I'm just going to abbreviate and create an alias for Q for the questions table. And I'm going to join it to the user table. And keep in mind, our user table is our left table. What we're joining to is going to go on the right. You need to clarify, as you see here, you need to say what you're going to join on. And these are the data points in both tables that'll match. So for example, the user ID. So we know that in the user table it's called ID. Let's look in questions. So this has ID. I don't know if this is necessarily the user ID though. What else do we have? Yeah, we have owner user ID. I'm going to assume it's going to be owner user ID. So let's do that. We're going to join on. So these are our matching pieces, as I stated previously. So on user dot ID equaling the questions owner underscore user ID. Now you can join on more than one criteria as well, and that actually is helpful if you can do it to kind of further narrow down the data that you return. But keep in mind, when we are doing an inner join, we want only the matching values. So what we're essentially saying is that we only want to get back user data where questions have been answered when we're joining it to this questions data set. We're going to join on the IDs, and also with the joins, you can also filter it down, not only just adding criteria to join on, but also kind of like your where statement or where clause where you would filter down. You can add additional filter criteria that you wanted to bring back. So we can say that because we're filtering down in our where statement where the creation date, so the user created date is going to be on or after January 1st, 2020, we can do that here. So we can say we want to join where the user IDs match and on the question creation date being on or after that same time frame. So we're going to do 2020 0101, and we can also state, I'm just going to copy this, and the question creation date is on or after January 1st, 2020, but also before 2024. And let's see, we can add in where the view count is greater. So where our question view count is greater than 50. So we are joining to the questions tables on the user ID matching where the creation date was was on or after January 1st, but before January 1st, 2024, and where the view count is greater than 50. So I'm putting in conditions directly in the join. This is kind of like a more efficient way than filtering it down later in our where clause. So we're going to only look at questions from 2020 to 2023 that got some kind of visibility here. So now we need to go ahead and add in some of the data we want to pull back in our select statement, like those columns. We want to go ahead and add that here. So what we're going to do is let's add our metrics to the select. So let me actually go back and look at the table. We're going to add in, so I believe this is probably going to be the question ID here. So let's do some aggregation, which means we will later need to do a group by, you guys, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So we're going to do a count, and I'm going to do a count distinct of the question IDs, just in case it's listed on multiple rows. We'll do a count of unique IDs just in case there's any duplication in the table. And we're going to do that as total, we'll call this total questions. And we're going to do, let's see if we can get an average of the questions, the view count. Do I have this right? Q view count? I think I need to wrap this in. Oh, okay. Okay, and then let's do, what else can we do for aggregation? We're going to, so there's a score we can use, view count. So let's actually do the score. Let's do the same thing. Let's do the average score. So round average. So we're going to get an average score for their questions, and then let's also use the questions to get their max score. So this is going to give us kind of like the highest score that a question has, if I can spell. And we'll call this our best question score. So we have our aggregation. We're getting a count of the question IDs. We're getting distinct, which are unique question IDs, to get a count of the total questions. We're going to get a average of the questions viewed, and then we're going to get an average of the scores, and then we're going to get their best score by calling out max. All right, now what we can do is actually also add in some categories to this. We can do some case statements here. do we want to categorize this? We can. Let's go ahead. So actually, hold on. Let me do this. I want to run this first, but let me add this into my group by. So anytime that you are doing aggregation, you are by default creating groups of data. So we're saying that, hey, for every user ID, whatever their reputation and display name, whatever, views, we're counting the total questions that belongs to this. So by default, we are grouping it by user ID when we're aggregating the count of questions, or we're getting an average of their question scores. We're doing that by these groups that are not aggregated. So we're doing it by this data here, which is not. So we need to add a group by there. And I need to spell correctly. And I need to add in the... All right, so let's run this and see what we get back, because I like to just run my queries throughout while I'm building them to see what it looks like. So for this user, let's go to John, because I can pronounce John. He has a reputation of 2789. He has 347 views. He joined May 25th, 2020. He has 156 questions. His average view of 247, average score of 1.28, and his best question score of 44. So now what we can go through doing is let's go back to working on these case statements. So if I want to, and this is considered a comment out, it's just you're adding notes into your query. So let's see if I do a count, case when. So what I'm saying here is when there is a score greater than or equal to 10, then I'm giving it a 1, and I'm going to end it as a high score question. That's the name of the column that we're going to call it. And let's do this for count case when. You can do this as like one column. It doesn't necessarily need to be multiple columns. So like here I can do case when q.score greater than or equal to 5, then 1 end. I can do it as ended as like a medium score question, but this is like if you're needing to aggregate them and create calculations for each individual score. But you can also do a combined if you just need categories. For example, you can do like a combined case statement or a case statement that has like multiple conditions. For example, you can do, instead of a count, you can do case when q.score is greater than or equal to 10, then high score question. So case when q score is greater than or equal to 10, then high score when it's greater than or equal to 5, then we could do else this, or then medium score else low score question. And then we can end it as like question scores. What did I do? All right, so I had to add single quotes to these because these are technically strings, and it's giving me an error about the group by because we have all this aggregation here. We have this aggregated. This is not an aggregation here, so I do need to add it to my group by if this is going to be a part of my final query, but it's not going to be. I was just showing this as an example for a case statement. So we're just adding, this would be a categorical data point or column that we add, but not going to. So going to take that out. And let's go back to our case statements. I'm going to add in one more. So we're going to do count case when q.score is greater than or equal to 0, and Oh, you know what? Actually, I need to correct this because I want it to be greater than or equal to 5, but I don't want it to overlap. So, and less than. And this one we're going to do greater than or equal to 0 and less than 5. Then 1 and. And if that doesn't make sense, if I did not put a range, so if I just said, hey, anything greater than or equal to 5, well, 10 is also is greater than or equal to 5. So does it name it high score? Does it name it medium score? That's a conflict, so you want to make sure you appropriately name your ranges or identify and call out your ranges in your query. We're going to do greater than 0 but less than 5 so that it doesn't overlap with the medium scores. And let me change this. All right, so we have this query built out. So let's go ahead and run this. And we don't have to make any adjustments to our group by here because these are all considered aggregations, you guys. So let's run that. So this part, our case statements are counting to categorize the question score. As a reminder, so Raul, his reputation, views, he joined July 2020. So just making sure like, hey, all of these things are meeting criterias and filters we already set. We got his average questions, his score. So we can see his best question score, high question. So we can see he has a lot of questions that fall into the low score questions. Oh, this person has 422. So we could do further calculations than that, maybe in like a data visualization tool like Tableau or Looker or whatever later on. But this is just making sure we're gathering appropriate data points. All right, so next what we're going to do is create a join to this the post answers data set. Now, like our questions, and the answers, this is also applicable. There is a many-to-many relationship. So what I'm going to do is a subquery when I left join to this, because with the user data set, there's going to be users that have lots of answers and questions. So there's a many-to-many relationship. So I'm going to aggregate the data here in the subquery and then select it in the outer query. So let's do a left join. And in our left join, we are going to go ahead and do our select. And what am I selecting from the answers? We have an owner user ID. So I'm gonna do that. And is there an okay, so I'm gonna do a count of their answer count, and I can probably do, we have a score, I can get an average of the scores. So let's do that. So this is just count all is just doing a count of the rows to give me a total answer count. And then I'm going to do average score as average answer score. And let's do a sum case. When the score is greater than 0, then 1, else 0 end. We're going to end that as positive answers. And we'll do the same thing we did up here where we get the max score as the best answer score. And this is going to be from, I forgot to get the table. And you guys may notice here I'm not doing an alias in the subquery because the subquery is kind of like its own mini temp table. So you have to give it an alias anyways at the end. So I don't need to give the table. I don't have to give the table an alias because when I select from it, it's going to be the alias that I assign to the subquery, which is again like its own little mini temporary table. We're also going to do the same time frame here. I believe there was a creation. Did I see a date? A creation date here? This is for answers. I thought I saw a date. Oh, there is creation date. Okay. So again, greater than or equal to 2020, 01, well, 0101. And we're going to do, so we're going to do where the user ID is not null. And again, because we are aggregating, these columns are going to be aggregated, but this one column is not. You need to do a group by the non-aggregated column. So group by owner user ID. And we're going to label this. This is going to be called answer. So I'm going to abbreviate that to answer. And because this is a left join, I need to also call out, okay, I didn't mean to tab that. So answer is what the, why does this keep changing? ANS. And I'm going to put what I'm joining on. Now, when you're doing a join, so with this join, I could join it to my questions, or I can join it to my users if I have like data points in common. What I'm going to do is I'm going to join it to the user data. So on user.id equaling the answer, owner user ID. With this subquery, what we've done is we've grouped all of the answers by the user. We got a count of the total answers per user. We got the average scores. We got their positive scores, or a count of their positive scores and their best answer score. So I'm going to do a left join with this because not every user who asks a question necessarily also has an answer to them, but we still want them included in our results. What I'm going to do is go ahead, like we've done before, I'm going to run this query, the subquery. I'm going to run the inner part of the subquery to make sure that brings back what I want. Again, I like to check. All right, and then what I'm going to do is we need to also bring this out of the query into our main query because we do want to select columns from this left join. So what I'm going to do is bring out the data we aggregated. So again, I think I might have to, I'm going to create some space here. So I think I'm going to have to do a coalesce because there are going to be some null values because, again, not every user that has questions also has answers. So what we can do is, instead of having it appear as a null, we can do a coalesce. So in the event that the value is null, we can have it put a 0 in its place. So that's what the coalesce is. So if this is null, then it'll bring in or merge in this other data point or other value for you. So what I'm going to do is COALESCE. Okay, look, spelling is not my strong point, okay? So coalesce, we're going to do the answer, which is our, again, the alias for the table that we're pulling this data from, like our temp table, So we're going to do total answers and 0. So when there is a null value in total answers, it will put a 0 in its place. And I'm just going to name it the same thing as total answers. We can do the same thing for the answer score, but I'm going to do, so we're going to do this for our average answer score. We're going to go out 2 decimal places. We're going to consider this like a float. Need a comma there. All right, and this is telling me I need to add it into my group by. Okay, all right, and I'm going to run this because I like to see. So we have total answers and answer score. Okay. All right, so this is going to be our final query, you guys. Of course, there's additional analysis that we can do, but look at the data. You have all of these different users. You can see those that have a higher reputation and those that don't. You can do some further analysis in a data visualization tool from this point to kind of compare and contrast based on user join date or based on, you know, their average questions viewed, scores, that kind of thing. You can see who are power users. You can see what their engagement patterns look like. You can see how their questions and answer activity, how they're correlated to one another. And this kind of, you know, analysis can help businesses like Stack Overflow understand behaviors and user engagement. So yeah. So I hope this has been helpful for you guys in understanding how to build out multiple joins, as well as how you would aggregate your data, as well as the importance of using group bys when you are aggregating your data. Again, please subscribe to the channel if you like this type of content. If you found this helpful, leave me a comment below as well if you have any questions, and I will see you guys in the next